I stood at my husband's grave 7 years ago, the wind whipping my black veil against my face, and I realized something that made my blood run colder than the autumn air. I wasn't crying because I had lost the love of my life. I was crying because I looked down at my own hands and realized I had no idea whose they were. For 42 years, those hands had cooked his meals, scrubbed his floors, and wiped the noses of our children, but they had never once held anything that belonged solely to me. I looked at the headstone and felt a terrifying, hollow silence, not just in the graveyard, but inside my own chest. The man I had served for 6 decades was gone, and he had taken the only version of me I knew right down into the dirt with him. I remember my daughter, Sarah, leaning over and whispering, "It's okay, Mom. You can come live with us. We'll keep you busy with the grandkids. You won't ever have to be alone." She meant it as a kindness, a soft place to land, but her words felt like a cage door swinging shut. To her, I wasn't a woman named Margaret with dreams of my own. I was a permanent babysitter, a professional helper, a piece of family furniture that just needed to be moved to a new room. She didn't see the panic in my eyes when I realized that everyone in my life was already planning how to spend my remaining years before I had even caught my breath. The cruelest part wasn't that they expected me to give, it was the way they took it for granted. I remember 30 years ago sitting at the kitchen table with a brochure for the local university. I was 35, the kids were finally in school, and my heart was pounding as I showed my husband the literature program. He didn't even look up from the newspaper. He just sighed, that long, dragging sound that meant I was being silly, and said, "Maybe later, Margaret. We've got the mortgage and the kids need braces. How could you think about yourself when the family is struggling?" That maybe later became the anthem of my life. It was the polite way of telling me that my soul was on the bottom of the priority list and it would stay there until there was nothing left of it but dust. I didn't break down at the funeral. I stood tall, my back as straight as an iron rod, and I thanked every person who shook my hand. I played the role of the strong widow to perfection because that's what I'd been trained to do since 1968. But inside, I was making a quiet, desperate vow. I looked at my daughter's sympathetic face and my son's worried eyes, and I knew that if I didn't find the woman I had buried 40 years ago, I would die without ever having met her. I went home that night to an empty house, sat in the dark, and for the first time in my life, I didn't ask for permission to exist. I just sat there and listened to the clock tick, realizing that for the first time, the time it was counting belonged only to me. You know that feeling, don't you? That quiet, heavy realization when you're standing in your own kitchen, surrounded by the life you built, and you suddenly feel like a ghost in your own home? I spent 60 years of my life trying to be the perfect everything, the perfect wife who kept the silver polished and the grievances buried deep, the perfect mother who never let her own tiredness show, even when my bones ached with a fatigue that sleep couldn't fix. I thought that self sacrifice was a crown I was supposed to wear. I thought that being good meant being invisible. But I've learned the hard way that when you spend your whole life smoothing the path for everyone else, you're the one who ends up with the calluses on your soul. I can still smell the starch on the shirts I ironed in 1970. I can still feel the cold porcelain of the sink from the millions of dishes I washed while the world went on outside my window. Back then, my mother told me that a good husband was all a woman needed. She told me that if I made him happy, I would be happy. It was a lie. A beautiful, polished, multi-generational lie that we passed down like heirloom china, never noticing that the china is cracked and the food we're serving on it is poisoned with resentment. Have you ever looked at your husband across the dinner table and realized you've forgotten how to speak to him about anything other than the weather or the kids? I remember when I turned 55, both my parents had passed away after years of me being their primary caregiver. I thought, this is it. Now it's my turn. I actually bought a set of oil paints. I could almost taste the freedom. But then my daughter called crying, her marriage in shambles. She moved back home with 2 toddlers in tow. My husband looked at me and said, "Thank God you're here to help her, Margaret. I don't know what she'd do without you." And just like that, the paints went into the back of the closet. I smiled and I held those grandbabies and I ignored the scream in my head that was telling me I was disappearing. I told myself I was being noble, but the truth is, I was just being afraid to say no. I used to think that saying no was a sin. I thought that my worth was measured by the length of the list of people who needed me. But here's what nobody tells you about being a woman: an empty cup can't quench anyone's thirst. I gave and gave until I was a hollow shell, and the worst part was the people I was giving to didn't even notice I was fading away. They liked the shell. It was convenient. It was quiet. It didn't have any needs that disrupted their comfort. I wonder, have you ever loved someone so completely that you couldn't see they'd stopped loving you back and had started just using you? But I didn't know what was waiting for me in the back of an old cedar chest 18 months after the funeral. I was cleaning out the attic, preparing to sell the house that felt more like a museum of my service than a home. I found a box of old letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon. They were letters my husband had written to me before we were married, back when we were 20 and the world was wide and bright. I opened one, the paper yellowed and crisp, and I read words I hadn't seen in half a century. He talked about my intelligence. He talked about my fiery spirit and how he couldn't wait to see the books I would write and the things I would accomplish. I sat on that dusty attic floor and I sobbed until my throat was raw, not because I missed him, but because I realized he had seen that girl too. He knew she existed, and then he spent the next 40 years helping me bury her under a mountain of laundry and maybe laters. And I had let him. I had been a co-conspirator in my own disappearance. I had taken that fiery spirit and used it to light the pilot light on the stove. I had taken that intelligence and used it to clip coupons and manage a household budget. I realized in that moment that I hadn't been a martyr. I had been a ghost. That was the day the perfect woman finally died, and I'm so glad she's gone. I was 72 years old, and I decided that if I only had 10 minutes of life left, I wanted those 10 minutes to belong to Margaret, not to Mom or Grandma or the widow. I did the unthinkable. I didn't move in with my daughter. I didn't volunteer for the church bake sale. I walked down to the local community college, my hands shaking so hard I had to sit on them in the lobby, and I enrolled in a literature class. The girl at the registration desk looked at me with a mixture of pity and confusion, the same way you look at a dog trying to do a card trick. But I didn't care. For the first time in 60 years, I was doing something that didn't benefit a single soul but my own. You know that feeling of a fresh notebook? The smell of the paper, the way the ink looks when it's still wet? I hadn't felt that excitement since I was a schoolgirl. I sat in a room full of 20-year-olds who looked at me like I was a museum exhibit. But when the professor started talking about Emily Dickinson and the cages we build for ourselves, I felt a door in my heart swing open so wide it hurt. I realized that all those years I thought I was being a good person, I was really just being a quiet one. I started to speak up. I started to have opinions that weren't filtered through what my husband would think or what my children would need. It wasn't easy. The first time my daughter called and asked me to watch the kids so she could go to a spa day, and I said, "No, honey, I have a midterm exam." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. You would have thought I'd told her I was joining the circus. "But, Mom," she said, her voice dripping with that specific kind of guilt we mothers know so well, "how could you be so selfish? The kids miss you. I'm stressed." I stayed quiet. I felt that old urge to apologize, to smooth it over, to give up my afternoon to make her life easier. But I looked at my Emily Dickinson book and I said, "I'm sure you'll find a way to manage, Sarah. I have to go now." I hung up the phone and I sat there trembling for 20 minutes. I felt like a criminal. But then a strange thing happened. the world didn't end. Sarah found a babysitter, the grandkids were fine, and I got an A on that exam. I realized that the only thing keeping me in that cage all those years was my own belief that I didn't have the right to leave. We teach people how to treat us, don't we? I had taught my family that my time was free and my needs were non existent. I had to unteach them one no at a time. It was the hardest work I've ever done, harder than any labor or any grief. Have you ever felt the weight of a decade? I'm 78 now, and when I look back at my 60s, my 50s, my 40s, I feel a grief that has nothing to do with death. I feel the grief of wasted time. I think about the books I never read because I was too busy folding socks. I think about the places I never saw because I was waiting for a better time that never came. I wasted 60 years of my life being who I thought I should be instead of who I was. And that, my dear, is the only real tragedy of my life. I can never get those years back. I can't go back and tell that 35-year-old woman to pick up her bags and walk out the door toward her dreams. But I can tell you, I see you, you know. I see you in the grocery store, your cart full of things for everyone else and nothing for yourself. I see you at the school gates, your eyes tired, your mind already 3 steps ahead to the next chore. I see you in the office doing the work of 3 people and taking the credit of none. You think you're being a good woman, you think you're being strong, but I'm telling you from the vantage point of 78 years that if you don't take up space in your own life, you will eventually become a ghost in it. Your life is not a dress rehearsal. This is the show. This is the only one you get. And every time you say yes to someone else when your soul is screaming no, you're taking a piece of your life and throwing it into a fire that will never keep you warm. I know what the world tells us. It tells us that a mother's love is measured by her self obliteration. It tells us that our glory is in our sacrifice. But there is no glory in disappearing. There is only regret. And let me tell you, regret is a heavy thing to carry when your knees are already getting weak. I remember my first solo trip. I was 74. I went to a small coastal town in Maine. Just me, a suitcase, and a stack of books. My son called me every day for the first 3 days, convinced I was going to fall or get lost or be kidnapped. Mom, this isn't safe. You're an old woman. Why can't you just go on a cruise with a group? I told him, Michael, I spent 40 years in a group. I've spent my whole life being watched. For the first time, I want to be the one doing the looking. I sat on a rock by the ocean and I watched the tide come in, and I realized that the ocean didn't care if I was a good wife or a perfect mother. It just was. And for the first time, I just was too. I started saying no to things I didn't want to do. I stopped going to the family dinners where I was expected to do all the cooking and cleaning while the men sat in the living room and talked about politics. The first time I said, I'll come for dinner, but I'm not cooking, you would have thought I'd declared war. My son-in-law laughed, thinking I was joking, but I wasn't. I showed up with a bottle of wine, sat on the sofa, and I watched the chaos. It was uncomfortable. The dinner was late. The kitchen was a mess. But I sat there and I had a real conversation with my grandson about his art, and I realized I'd missed so much of their lives because I was always in the kitchen looking at their backs. I'm 78 now, and I finally know who I am. I am a woman who loves a stiff cup of Earl Grey and a book by a window. I am a woman who isn't afraid of the dark or the silence. I am a woman who knows that my value isn't tied to how many casseroles I can produce in a week. I am finally free. But the heartbreaking part is that I only have a few years of this freedom left. I have 6 years of me to balance against 60 years of them. The math doesn't add up, does it? I want you to look in the mirror today, not to check your wrinkles or your gray hair, though those are just maps of the battles you've won. I want you to look past the mom and the wife and the employee and find that girl you used to be, the one who wanted to dance or travel or study the stars or just sit in the grass and do nothing. Where is she? How deep did you bury her? And more importantly, why are you still holding the shovel? You think you're doing it for your family, but what kind of example are you setting for your daughters? Are you teaching them that their dreams are secondary? Are you teaching your sons that women are just resources to be used? We teach people how to treat us by the way we treat ourselves. If you treat yourself like a doormat, don't be surprised when people start wiping their feet on you. I spent 60 years being a doormat, and I was so proud of how clean everyone else's shoes were. What a foolish thing to be proud of. I should have been proud of the dirt on my own boots from walking my own path. I should have been proud of the waves I made instead of the fires I smoothed over. I know it's scary. I know the guilt feels like a physical weight in your stomach, but that guilt is just the sound of your old programming trying to keep you in line. It's the voice of every person who ever benefited from your silence. Ignore it. It gets quieter every time you say no. It gets quieter every time you choose yourself. And eventually, it's replaced by a much more beautiful sound, the sound of your own voice. I remember my literature professor asking us what we thought the greatest tragedy in the awakening was. Most of the young students talked about the ending, about the loss. I raised my hand, the oldest woman in the room, my voice a bit shaky but certain, and I said, "The tragedy isn't how it ended. The tragedy is that she spent her whole life thinking she was the only one who felt that way. We are not alone in this, darling. There are millions of us sitting in quiet living rooms wondering if we're allowed to want more. I'm telling you, you are. You are allowed to be the protagonist of your own story. Don't wait until your husband passes. Don't wait until the kids are settled, because they are never truly settled. They will always find something else for you to do. Don't wait for a permission slip that is never going to come. You have to be your own hero. You have to be the one who saves yourself, because the truth is, the people who love you might not even realize they're drowning you. They're just used to you being the water. I look at my life now and I see so much color. I started taking art classes, and my paintings are terrible, but I love every messy stroke. I joined a hiking group for seniors, and we move at the speed of a wounded turtle, but we laugh until our sides ache. I have friends now who don't know me as Michael's mom or Robert's wife. They know me as Margaret, a woman who tells bad jokes and loves to talk about Russian history. It's a small life in some ways, but it's mine, and that makes it the biggest life I've ever had. I want you to imagine yourself at 78. If you keep doing exactly what you're doing right now, what will that woman say to you? Will she thank you for your noble sacrifice? Or will she look at you with tears in her eyes and ask, "Why didn't you let me live? Why did you give all my time away to people who didn't even say thank you?" That is the only ghost you should be afraid of, the ghost of the woman you could have been. I think about the letter I found in the attic almost every day. I keep it on my nightstand, not to remember my husband, but to remember that girl, the one with the fiery spirit. I'm trying to make it up to her now. I'm trying to give her the 6 years she's had so far and fill them with enough life to make up for the 60 she lost. It's a tall order, but I'm doing my best. I'm reading the books she wanted to read. I'm seeing the sights she wanted to see. I'm finally holding her hand. You still have time. Whether you're 30, 50, or 70, if there is breath in your lungs, there is time to claim your life. It starts with one no. It starts with 1 hour a day that belongs to no one but you. It starts with realizing that you are a human being, not a human doing. You are not a service. You are a soul, and that soul is your responsibility, not anyone else's. I spent so much time worrying about being a good mother, but I realize now that the best thing I ever did for my daughter was when I started saying no to her, because I was showing her that it was okay for her to say no too. I was showing her that a woman's life doesn't end when she gets married or has children. I was showing her that she's allowed to be a person, all on her own. It took her a while to get it. She was angry for a year, but now she looks at me with a different kind of respect. She sees a woman, not a shadow, and that is a far better legacy than any number of casseroles. Don't make my mistake. Don't wait until the silence of a grave is the only thing that gives you permission to speak. Speak now, live now, make waves now, because the time is going to pass anyway. You can spend it disappearing or you can spend it becoming. And let me tell you, from a 78-year-old woman who is finally alive, becoming is a whole lot more fun. I know you're worried. About what people will think. What will the neighbors say? What will my mother in law say? What will my kids think? Here's a secret from the other side of 70. They're not thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are. They're thinking about themselves. They might be inconvenienced for a week or a month, but they will adjust. And if they don't, if they can only love the version of you that is a servant, then that isn't love, darling. That's a contract. And you're allowed to tear it up. I'm 78 years old and my cup is finally full, not because anyone filled it for me, but because I stopped letting everyone else take sips from it until it was dry. I pour for myself first now. And you know what? When I do give to my grandchildren or my friends, it's from a place of joy, not a place of duty. It tastes better for everyone. Love that is given freely is the only kind that counts. Love that is extracted through guilt and tradition is just a chore. I wish I could go back to 1968. I'd stand at the back of that church and I'd tell that young girl in the white lace, "You are more than this dress. You are more than this vow. Don't lose yourself in the we so much that you forget the I." I can't go back, but I can stand here now and tell you, you are enough, just as you are, without the cooking, without the cleaning, without the helping, without the disappearing. You are enough. You have the opportunities we didn't have. You have the voices calling out for equality that we only heard as whispers in our dreams. Don't waste those opportunities trying to fit into a mold that was designed to break you. Break the mold instead. It's a lot more satisfying. I spent 60 years trying to fit, and all it did was make me small. I'm 78, and I'm finally making waves. And let me tell you, the water feels great. I think about the letter often, but I also think about the paints in the back of the closet. I finally took them out. I'm not very good, as I said, but I painted a picture of the ocean in Maine. It's hanging in my hallway. It's a mess of blues and grays and whites, but every time I walk past it, I see my own freedom. I see the day I stopped waiting for later. I see the woman I finally became. Your younger self is waiting for you to be her hero. Your older self is waiting for you to give her a life worth remembering. Don't let them both down. You have so much power, darling. You just have to be brave enough to use it. And bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's doing it anyway, even when your heart is pounding and your voice is shaking. Especially then. I'm 78, and for the first time in my life, I'm not waiting for anything. I'm just living. I'm eating my dessert first. I'm reading poetry at 3 in the morning. And I'm saying exactly what I think. It's a wonderful way to exist. I highly recommend it. But please don't wait until you're 72 to start. Start today. Start with a small no. Start with a big dream. Just start. The world doesn't need more perfect women. It needs more whole women. It needs women who are alive, who are vibrant, who have boundaries and dreams and voices that don't apologize for taking up space. That is where the real strength is. Not in the sacrifice, but in the authenticity. I learned it late, but I'm so glad I learned it at all. I look out my window at the world and it seems so much bigger than it used to. It used to be just the size of my kitchen and my yard. Now it's as big as the books I read and the places I go. My world expanded the moment I stopped shrinking myself to fit inside it. And your world can too. It's waiting for you. It's always been waiting for you. So, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep waiting for maybe later? Or are you going to decide that later is right now? I hope you choose now. I hope you choose yourself. I hope you decide that you are worth the effort of your own life because you are. You truly, deeply are. If this story reached into your heart today, it's because that girl inside you is trying to catch your eye. She's tired of being buried. She's tired of the maybe laters. She's ready to come out and play. Let her, give her the pen, let her write the next chapter. I promise you, it will be the best one yet. I wish I could sit with you and have a cup of tea and listen to all the things you've been keeping quiet. I tell you that your dreams aren't silly. I tell you that your fatigue is real. I tell you that you are allowed to be tired of giving. And then I tell you to stand up, walk to the door, and take a breath of fresh air that belongs to no one but you. I'm 78, and I'm finally home. Not in a house, but in my own skin. It's the best feeling in the world. I want that for you. I want you to know what it feels like to look in the mirror and recognize the woman staring back at you. I want you to know what it feels like to be free. Don't wait. Time is the only thing we can't make more of. Spend it wisely. Spend it on yourself because you are the only one who can. No one is going to hand you your life on a silver platter. You have to go out and grab it with both hands. I'm so grateful I had these 6 years. I'm so grateful I finally said no. I'm so grateful I found that letter. But most of all, I'm grateful that I realized before it was entirely too late that I mattered just because I exist. And so do you. I want to hear your stories. I want to know about the maybe laters you're finally turning into right nows. Have you ever had to choose between what the world expected of you and what your soul needed? It's a hard choice, isn't it? But it's the only one that leads to life. Tell me in the comments, have you ever found the courage to put yourself first? Have you ever said a no that felt like a yes to your own soul? I'd love to read about your journey, and if you're still in the maybe later phase, that's okay too. We all start somewhere. Just promise me you won't stay there for 60 years. Promise me you'll take one tiny step today. Buy the book, sign up for the class, say no to the bake sale. Just do one thing that is for you and only you. Your life is waiting for you. It's a beautiful, messy, vibrant thing. Go get it. And remember, it's never too late to come home to yourself. I'm 78 and I'm just getting started. If I can do it, you can too. Every mother gives pieces of herself away. We give until we're just a collection of edges and empty spaces. But we have to leave something for ourselves. We have to keep a piece of the pie for our own hunger. What are you keeping for yourself today? I hope it's something beautiful. I'm 78 and I'm finally living. I hope you are too, or I hope you start today, because the sunset is coming for all of us. And I want you to be able to look back at the day and say, I was there. I was really, truly there. Thank you for listening to an old woman's heart. It means the world to me that my voice is finally being heard. Subscribe if you want to stay a while. There's always a chair by the fire and a warm cup of tea waiting for you here. I have so many more stories to tell now that I'm finally the one telling them. Remember, darling, it's never too late to come home to yourself. I'm 78 years old and I finally know the way. It's a beautiful path. Come join me. I'm going to go finish my painting now. The light is just right, and for the first time in my life, I don't have anywhere else I should be. I'm exactly where I want to be. I hope you can say the same. Blessings to you on your journey. May you find the courage to take up space. May you find the strength to say no. And may you find the joy of finally meeting yourself. Until next time, sweetheart. Keep your heart open and your no ready. You're going to need it, but it's going to be worth it. I promise. Happy listening, and I'll see you in the next story. With all my love and respect, Margaret.